right. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. We are ticking off the last couple days of May. We've got 2 more days before we wrap up for the month. We've been celebrating biodiversity throughout May, particularly around the 22nd, which is the International Day for Biological Diversity. And we still have a few more live sessions to go before we jump into June and all of our World Ocean Day events. So we have a huge week planned next week. Head to exploringbytheseat.com to find all of those. And today we have a full slate. We've got our event this morning with Charles. At noon, we're hanging out with Gabby and talking about protecting amphibians and reptiles in Ecuador. At 3 o'clock, we'll be with Andrew Digby in New Zealand, talking about the amazing rare species of birds that he's been protecting. And then tomorrow we'll be with Canopy Meg Lohman, who's pioneered exploring the ecosystem above our heads in the canopies of the trees, where there's so much left to discover, new species, and the like. So let's get into today's live action. Today we'll be spending a little time with Charles Emogor. Charles is a biodiversity conservationist studying patterns of poaching in Sub-Saharan African national parks. So he combines research with exploration to enhance crime prevention strategies in national parks. He's also collecting really important data to improve the well-being of the communities around these national parks. If the communities aren't thriving, the wildlife isn't going to thrive either. He founded the Pangolin Protection Network. It's a team that is using art to raise awareness of pangolins and has worked in many Nigerian communities to foster positive attitudes towards biodiversity. So let's see if I can get Charles in here back from backstage. Hey, Charles, how are you?
Hi, Joe. I'm well, thank you. Yourself?
Good, good. Charles, it's so great to have you with us today. I believe you're joining us from the UK today?
Yes, I'm joining from Cambridge, England.
All right, excellent. Well, Charles, we've got a great group of classrooms. Some of them are hanging out backstage. Some of them are tuning in via YouTube. So we're going to turn them loose in a little bit with some questions. But before then, I'd like to let you take over for a little bit and take us into the work you're doing.
Brilliant. Thank you.
All right. Perfect. Looks good, Charles.
Great. Well, really lovely to be here today. Thanks, Joe, and thanks you all for joining and for listening. Well, this is me with an animal called the pangolin, and in this talk I will talk about what this animal is, how I got to holding one of them, and actually I've held a couple of them because they're really rare. So I think it's an interesting and important story, but also the threats and conservation efforts that we're currently doing to stop this animal going to extinction. And I'm sure you already know, but just to recap, when an animal goes extinct, it means that the last known individual has not been seen for a really long time, and so that animal has been wiped off the planet. And there are examples of that in human history, including the dodo, which is very famous, which is a famous story. Well, I grew up in Southeast Nigeria and I saw loads of cool animals. So this was me, I think I was maybe about 4 or 5 or 6, I can't remember. But this was my landscape. So I grew up in this environment that is a bit depleted now, but about 20, 30 years ago, there used to be quite tall trees and nice streams going past, and all of the brown areas you see that's bare soil right now used to be some form of natural area, either trees or forest or maybe even farms in some areas, but not as bare as you see this now. And what that meant was that I had a really cool childhood, how you have the countryside. This was it for me, right? Going in and interfacing with some of these animals, seeing them every now and then, the birds, the small rodents, and the likes. But what's really interesting around this, defining about this period in my childhood was that I saw on television an animal that I now know as a pangolin. And it was really interesting because back in the day, I didn't really know what it was, but it caught my attention because, as I will show in a couple of moments, you'll see how this is different from, a regular, say, coyote, for example. I saw many mushkin rats and porcupines, small animals, but pangolin really different. Now, what are pangolins? And you can think of pangolins however you want, but we can start with, say, if you imagine a cross between an acorn and a Komodo dragon, right? You can describe them as a grumpy pineapple or walking artichoke, or a four-legged pine cone, a climbing cactus, or even as Pokemon with scales. But more seriously, pangolins are super incredible animals. They're the only mammals on our planet that have scales. Can you imagine that? Mammals usually do not have scales. You and I are mammals. We do not have scales. And other mammals do not have scales. But pangolins, for some weird reason, have scales. Well, the story is that pangolins evolved around 80 million years ago. So also very cool. When we had dinosaurs walking on Earth, we also had an ancestor of pangolins, which is, pretty amazing, where we still have something that, ancient or historic living with us today. And there are four species of pangolins in Africa, and there's four in Asia. Pangolins are incredibly rare to study in the wild, and that means that it's really hard for us to understand how many, pangolins are left. And you may be wondering that. We do not know on a broad level. But what we do know based on anecdotal evidence, and that's just people's experiences, is that the pangolins in Africa might be better off in terms of their population than those in Asia. And that's because of the increasing threat in Asia, where they're used for traditional medicine and they're used for, the meat is also eaten, but their scales are largely used for traditional medicine. So four species in Africa, four in Asia. And the species I work with, which you currently see on the screen, is the white-bellied pangolin. There's also the black-bellied pangolin in the landscape where I grew up. And you may be wondering, why is it called a white-bellied? Well, you guessed it right. If you look closely, you would see it's got a white or gray or whatever it is, but yeah, not immaculate white, but a white-bellied. So that's why it's called a white-bellied pangolin. Well, pangolins are also quite defenseless animals that feed on ants and termites alone. So this pangolin species is a Temminck's pangolin. It's a much bigger one. The one I currently work with is the white-bellied pangolin, and it's around 2 kilograms. These ones can go up to 9 to 15 kilograms, so quite big. And these are mainly found in Southern Africa. Well, they feed on only ants and termites. They don't have any teeth, and so they use this, really long tongue that can stretch up to the length of their bodies for collecting the ants and slurping it, which is, I've seen that once in the wild. It's just magnificent to see. Pangolins do also, which I found really cool, carry their young on the back like this. I think it's just amazing. That they do this. I haven't seen this in the wild, and it is a dream to potentially. It would be great to potentially see this. Pangolin scales, as I mentioned earlier, are used for traditional medicine, but this is quite illegal in some places. Well, overall, it's illegal to kill pangolins and hunt them, or trade in them and even consume them. There's also an international treaty, so an international agreement that stops anybody, including you and I, from taking pangolin scales from one country to the other. It's illegal on that level. But that still happens. Pangolin scales are traded internationally, meat is eaten locally. And as I mentioned, your scales are used in traditional medicine. And this is largely in, China, where people believe that pangolin scales have have healing or medicinal properties. And so pangolin scales are maybe taught to cure cancer or to increase lactation. That's having a mom who's had a baby, to produce more milk for the baby. There's just so much that pangolin scales are believed to do, but we do know, based on scientific evidence, that that's not correct in terms of having traditional medicine medicinal properties, because pangolin scales are made up of keratin, and that's the same component in our hair and our fingernails. Well, remember I said I learned about pangolins, first in my childhood. Fast forward to when I was 22, I saw my first pangolin specimen in a wild meat market in Nigeria. And these are not actual pangolins, but these are pangolin scales from white-bellied pangolins. That's the closest I ever got, after about almost 2 decades of being, hoping to see pangolins in the wild. And this was after I was spending quite a lot of time in a protected area, so in a national park in Nigeria, doing anti-poaching patrols. So working around with the rangers to figure out how we can reduce threats to illegal activities that are illegal, threats to animals that are being hunted illegally in the national park. I worked in this job for about 2 years, and we would usually spend 2 to 3 weeks in a month in the forest, camping in our bags, camping in tents and taking our bags around. I never saw a pangolin, and so when I saw this in a wild meat market, I was quite moved, and I decided to do something about it. So this pushed me to apply for a PhD to study pangolin conservation, the ecology, and figure out what was happening in Nigeria. So I moved from Nigeria to Cambridge, where I currently am, to do my PhD. And after a few months of studying the PhD, I returned to Nigeria in the same pack where I, used to do this conservation work, and in the same location where I grew up, to understand the movement patterns of pangolins and generally their lifestyle in the forest. Well, because you have no buildings in the forest or your typical forest, we had to set up tents like we usually do when I was on my former job. And you stay in the tent and you carry your bags around. Well, the good thing this time was we were really confined to this area, so searching around here looking for pangolins. And pangolins are nocturnal, or at least the species I work with. And so that meant that we would sleep during the day and be active at night, which is not what humans would normally do. So that was a bit challenging. Well, photos again of pangolin scales that are used for traditional medicine. Well, so when we got to the forest on one of the trips, we were quite lucky that we found a good number of pangolins. And like in this photo, I was trying to fit a tracker on one of the animals to figure out where they go to. And the idea is, if you put a tracker on the animal, you don't need to be there all the time. That would reduce any form of disturbance, so you don't have to induce stress on the animal, but you also have the comfort of just staying for a while away from the animal and watching it, because it might change its behavior when you are there. So we put this tracker on the animal, on a pangolin. That's a VHF tracker, so it operates like a radio. If you turn on a radio, it needs to get signal from the atmosphere, let's put it that way. And so you need, in your regular radio, you need an antenna, which you take around with you trying to find signal. That's what this particular tracker did. But in this particular instance, we switched to a GPS tracker. So this removed all of that, redundancies going around looking for the tracker, the signal. Now you can just stay from far and get all of this data. And this is what the GPS tracker looked like. But this was an interesting project. We spent quite a lot of money, about 10,000 US dollars over maybe a year and a half, and a lot of human resources in terms of the energy and time we spent doing it. And we did not have a lot of data. That's because, like I mentioned, pangolins are super difficult to find. They're rare. This particular species goes up in a tree, stays on the forest floor, but they also dig a hole in the ground where they stay sometimes. And they're nocturnal, and so it's just really difficult to get any useful data. So this is the only reasonable data we got from one individual, and it's just 7 days of GPS tracking. Well, because I spent a lot of time with the hunters, it just made a lot of sense to and the hunters started telling me a lot about what they were doing in terms of how they were catching animals. And this project was not successful, or pretty much failing. So I decided to try something else. And I started with just understanding how the scale of pangolin exploitation. Recall, we talked about pangolins being traded internationally for scales from Africa to Asia. And so I started to figure out what was happening. And, we used a lot of information. My team and I used a lot of information based on what's been trafficked internationally, in terms of what law enforcement officers are confiscating. Recall, it's illegal to take pangolins, for example, from Nigeria to the US. And so if that's ever seen, it's confiscated and it's reported. So use all of that information that's been available to estimate that around 190 kilograms of 90,000 kilograms of pangolin scales would have been would have been traded or trafficked, at least that over a decade, and that would have come from at least 800,000 pangolins. And these are just pangolins that these are just trades that are linked to Nigeria as a country. So trade that either started from Nigeria or from another African country that went through Nigeria. But I moved on from this to then figure out why African pangolins are killed in the first place. The main thing here was just to figure out whether this recent boom in pangolin trafficking has then added something more, which is, adding to the exploitation of pangolins on the ground. Because remember the two photos, the photo I showed of me holding two pangolin scales. That was a wild meat market. You may be wondering what that is. It's a place called a game, like you get like so many animals that are killed and they're kept there and they're bought and sold for meat. Pangolins are usually part of that, the options that you will find on the market. And so I wanted to figure out whether pangolins are now being killed because of this booming international trade for the scales, or whether that is now adding to the local exploitation of pangolins for meat. And so I needed to talk to the hunters again to answer these questions. And because I already built a good relationship with the hunters, it was pretty easy. It was still a tough thing to do, but I already had the trust of the hunters. And so they would openly tell me about what they were doing, although it was illegal and continues to be illegal in Nigeria to hunt, to trade, and to eat pangolin meat. And so what we found was that actually pangolin was mainly killed for their meat. And so the really simple graph you see here, the green bars just show you that that's for meat, and then the top ones would be why pangolins are hunted, whether they were hunted for scale. So quite a lot of the hunters that went out were hunting pangolins for meat, either for themselves or to sell. And this is around data from around 700 hunters in Southeast Nigeria. So we also found that pangolin meat is considered highly, highly palatable. And what that means is that it's very tasty. People think that pangolin meat is better than every other meat, about 90 types of meat that's consumed in this region. So the other color that you see there is, I guess that's pink. I'm not sure. I'm not great with colors. These are pangolins. The rest are other types of meat, and it's not super clear, but the three pangolins in the landscape were actually considered the most palatable. That is the most tasty, and this is data from around 600 vendors. That's people who sell general wildlife, people who hunt. These are hunters, or you and I who may not be hunters or vendors, but consume pangolins or meat in our households. So it was pretty striking at that point that there was more of a local driver of pangolin exploitation than the international driver. And so you can think of it this way: if we stopped all of the pangolins from being trafficked, so all of the scales from being trafficked, we would not be tackling the problem because pangolins would have died anyway. What we found as well was that pangolin scales were being discarded. About 70% of the scales were being discarded. Only about 30% that was sold. And what this means is that a lot of what I used in the first analysis that I talked about was data from was just an underestimate, because a lot of it was discarded anyway. So pangolin exploitation it is more sinister than we actually thought. So I started working with the hunters then to figure out what was going on, but actually, well, not what was going on at this point, but figure out how we can improve conservation, pangolin conservation. So held a lot of conversations with the hunters, tried to raise awareness and tell them a little bit about pangolins, why pangolins are cool, and why we should not hunt them at that rate because we might not have any left. We've also been working with schools in Nigeria. So pangolins are endangered. Notebook. So these are notebooks that we give out to the schools, and we also provide information behind providing information why pangolins are endangered and how we can work to save pangolins. On our website, pangolino.org, which I'll talk about in a bit, you can also go and provide artwork if you want to. We try to raise awareness. If you do art, it doesn't matter what kind of art, art is art, and we appreciate it. And we'll put it on the website. And the idea is engage other people to make art for pangolins in a way to not just spread awareness, but get them thinking about what pangolins represent and how they can contribute to pangolin conservation. So this is just a few art from our website, our Pangol gallery. So this is one, and time is running out. Just talks about how much we need to start acting right to save pangolins from potential extinction, because time is running out. That's a cake pangolin that somebody did a while ago. I didn't eat the cake, I didn't make it, but I think it's a really amazing piece of art. Piece for pangolins, somebody send that across as well. Christmas pangolins is not Christmas yet, not the holidays, but I guess we can always relate to some cozy feeling. And rainbow pangolins. We also have this pangolins that, this ant-eating pangolins. Talked about the, long tongues earlier, or tongue earlier, and this is what they would usually do: stick their head in and try to slurp some ant and termites. Pineapple pangolins, I think this is my all-time favorite. It's just such great ingenuity. And currency pangolin, unfortunately, because pangolin scales are sold internationally, this just depicts the threat that pangolins face. So I'm just going to play this really quick video to summarize some of the other work that we're doing, because we're trying to also use media in the sense of a documentary to raise awareness about pangolin exploitation locally. Well, thank you so much for listening. That's the end of the presentation. Happy to answer any questions or provide more information about what I just talked about.
Awesome, Charles. Thank you so much. I'm going to pop that backstage. That was great. Thank you so much for taking us into the world of the pangolin and also the really important conservation work that you're doing, whether it's tagging to learn more about, their behavior, how they travel, things like that, to working with the local communities and making sure they understand why biodiversity is so important. It's all great work. So thanks so much for what you and, your colleagues do, Charles. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So what I think we'll do today, before we jump into Q&A action, I pulled together a little Kahoot quiz behind the scenes, Charles. We're going to test the students on some of their new knowledge of pangolins. So I am going to hit start on this. Oh, there it is. And then I'm going to share my screen so that we can play this action. So you should see it come up shortly on my screen. There we go. If you want to join today, you want to go to kahoot.it. The PIN number is 4430982. So once you get there, it's going to ask you for a PIN number, and you just need to zip over and put in that PIN number. So we'll give a few moments for some classrooms to come in here and to join us. And while we do that, maybe I'll take a couple questions from our classrooms as well. So there we go. I see we've got over 20 groups in here with us already. That's great. But let's start off with a little bit of Q&A while we wait for a few more classrooms to come in here and get to us. So I see you've got Mr. Hancock's crew hanging out backstage. Mr. Hancock, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, Joe. Nice to see you. Thanks. That was amazing, Charles. My class was silent and engaged. They were right into it. One of my students wanted to know, how do pangolin scales get bigger and grow?
That's a great question. Take your hands up and just look at your fingernails, right?
Look at your fingernails.
And you can, you can imagine how pangolin scales grow just by how fast your fingernails grow. It may not be at the same rate. Pangolin scales might be faster or slower. I really don't know. Never studied it, but it's very similar. It's a similar compound. It's keratin that we currently have. And so it grows to an extent that, if it's very long, it can easily just fall off, maybe because you whack it on something and it's not really strong anymore. So you got to keep it trim. That said, though, pangolins usually would. So when a pangolin is young, the scales are usually very fine and very regularly shaped. But as it grows older, becomes very unruly and not so nice. So you can actually tell whether a pangolin is a young pangolin or a really old pangolin based on how the edges of the scales look.
Oh, that's great. You can tell the age too. And it kind of almost looked like seashells, kind of like layered over each other.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
thanks so much.
Cool. I did a quick Google search, Charles, and nobody has studied that. Nobody has researched. So any students out there who want to research pangolins, we could find out the growth rate potentially of these scales.
I am not surprised. There is a lot that isn't known about pangolins. There's a lot.
My whole class never heard of them, so they were excited for the trip today.
Oh, great! Very pleased.
We're gonna do some pangolin art later, so
yeah. Please send them across. I didn't say, but you can get in touch through Joe. The art will be posted online on the website. It's Pangolino, so Pangolin with an O.org. We will post them online and credit whoever's done it, and you can always go and interact with it and share it with your family and friends.
Perfect. We'll do it this afternoon. That's great. Thanks, Charles.
Brilliant.
All right. Very cool. Well, let's pause the Q&A and let's play a little Kahoot before we get back into some Q&A action. There are 5 questions today. There's some true or false. There's some multiple choice. The quicker you get the right answer, the more points you're going to get. And I think we're ready here. So question 1, where is Charles joining us from today? And the timer has started. Is it in Nigeria? Is it in the UK, Australia, or Senegal? Where is Charles joining us from today? There's a little clue decoding here, a photo clue in the background. You've got a few more seconds left on the clock. Is he in Nigeria today, the United Kingdom, Australia, or in Senegal? Got about 5 more seconds to lock something in. All right. So he is in the UK. So congrats to the students who nailed that. The next question will be important for you as to why a lot of students might have guessed the first one. So let's jump into the next question and see. So Charles grew up in Nigeria. Is that true or is that false? Did Charles grow up in Nigeria? True or false? You've got a few more seconds to lock something in. And then we'll jump to our next question. So about 10 seconds. All right, there we go. You guys finished that one quickly. That's absolutely true. So I can see why there might have been a little confusion with the first question. But Charles right now is in Cambridge in the United Kingdom, but he did grow up in Nigeria. Another true or false coming your way. There are at least 10 mammals that have scales. So what do you think about that one? True or false? There's at least 10 mammals that have scales. What do you think? Is that true? Is that false? We know our pangolins definitely have scales, but are there 9 other mammal species that have scales as well? You've got 5 more seconds to lock something in. All right. So good job to the false crew. It is false. There are no other mammals that have scales. It is the pangolins. About how many species of pangolins are there? Is the next question coming your way? Is it 2? Is it 4? Is it 6? Or is there as many as 8 species of pangolins? So how many species of pangolins are there? 2, 4, 6, or 8? We know, oh, that was fast. You guys are quick today. You're right. It is 8. You beat the timer. So 4 in Africa and 4 in Asia. Last question coming your way. This is a multi-select, and I'll give you a clue. You need to pick 2 of them. So why are pangolins hunted? Why are pangolins being hunted? Is it traditional medicine? Is it as pets? Is it because they're a pest? Or is it for food? So you've got 4 options. You need to pick 2 options that Charles talked about today. Is it traditional medicine? Is it the pet trade as pets? Oh, you guys are fast. Traditional medicine and food. Good job, crew. You beat the timer again. Okay, let's take a look at our podium and see who finished on the top today. In third place, we've got the prairie giraffe. Very cool. In second place, the fast ibex. And holding down that top spot, we've got the Arctic frog. All right, crew, good job today. Thanks for playing along. I'm going to turn off that screen share and come back front and center. I should be back now. There we go. All right, Charles, let's get some more Q&A action going. If you are tuning in via YouTube, don't be shy. Use the chat sidebar. I'm going to dip in and visit a couple of our camera classrooms now. So Mr. Poole's class are hanging out with us today. Looks like there's some grade 6s. Mr. Poole, how are you guys doing today?
Hey, we're doing great, Joe. Can you guys hear me?
We got you loud and clear.
Yeah, we can't. I can't show us on the camera, but we were Arctic Frog in that Kahoot, and my class is pumped.
Good job.
Yeah, that was a super neat presentation. I didn't know much about pangolins. It seemed like they were glued to the screen, and just what a fascinating creature. Very cool that you taught us what you did today, and that you continue educating people about it.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
A couple of my students had some questions today. Is it okay if we ask 2 questions?
Go for it. 2 or 3, whatever you want. Let's grab some of them.
Okay, Jude is going to come ask you something here.
I want to ask, why do pangolins like curl up into a ball like a snail shell? Like, why do they do that?
That's a great question. So we don't know why in terms of why exactly they do it, but we can explain a little bit about why it's useful. So pangolins in circumstances why when you would find that pangolins would usually roll into a ball when they're threatened. So and that's potentially because that's the only way that they can show, they can exhibit, they can defend themselves. But now you might be wondering, that's quite different from other animals that I know, right? Like a dog or a cat or something, right? If they're scared, they run away. That's why I said we don't know why they would choose to go up into a ball. But that's not really good for them. I mean, you can imagine though that because they've evolved and they've been alive for a really long time, they're not used to the threats that they find today, right? And so that was good for them a couple of hundreds of thousands of years ago, but not anymore. And so right now, if you see a pangolin, it rolls up into a ball because it's scared. If you really want to catch it and use it for food or traditional medicine, you can easily pick it up. So that's actually not a really good defense mechanism anymore. And we hope that hopefully they evolve over time to evade humans and run away like other animals do, and that might give them a better chance at survival. But that's a great question.
Tu veux que je pose ta question? Okay, thank you so much. And then my one other student wanted to know what type of punishment there would be for like poaching pangolins.
It depends where you are. In Nigeria, for example, if you kill a pangolin, the current law is that you go to prison for about a year, or you pay the equivalent of around $500 to $1,000 US. But the enforcement of the law is not really strong, and so people still actively do it. I mean, the scales that I showed you was just in the open market, right? And so that's evidence someone is trading pangolins, which should, land them in prison or to pay a fine. But I don't think that usually happens. It rarely happens. But the part that's really the enforcement is stronger is when you try to take pangolins, or people do try to take pangolins from one country to the other. There's more eyes on that kind of operation, if you like, and because usually we're not talking about 1 or 2 pangolins, we're talking about loads and loads of pangolins. It makes it more serious crime, and there's usually a lot more attention towards it. But yeah, I think it really depends where you are. But in pretty much all countries where pangolins exist, anyone would get into trouble big trouble, either in prison or paying a lot of money for trying to kill them or sell them or consume them.
Okay, thanks very much. Interesting.
All right, thanks, Mr. Pool's crew. I can check in with you towards the end to see if you guys have one more follow-up.
Okay, perfect.
All right, perfect. So we've got an elementary virtual school hanging out with us today. I'll see if they want to unmute. Oh, there we go. How are we doing today?
We're great. We love the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our question is how, like, when you're studying the pangolins, how do you pick them up without hurting yourself or hurting them?
Great question. So because pangolins don't have teeth, you're less scared of, getting bitten. But they have those scales, right? And, it's not the best. It's not very smooth. Well, but it becomes easy because they already do the tough job for you, right? They just roll into a ball and stay there. And so you just pick them up lightly. Usually, as you can see in the photo, you would usually have a glove and just make sure you are properly protected, because you don't want to be touching animals, because you don't know what they carry. But we usually care less or are worried less about hurting the pangolins or the pangolins hurting us, because it's already in that really, cooperative state, if you like.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll pop back your way to see if you have a follow-up for us. I've got some questions here online, Charles. So this is from a grade 6 classroom, and they're wondering, what is it about pangolins that attracted you to them in the first place?
So it's this, this imagination, right? As a child, you just feel like everything that you know is the end of the world, right? I don't know if I was alone in this, but everything that you see and everything that you know, that's just where the world ends. And so, you start watching television, it exposes you to like other possibilities, and you start figuring it out, but also it still isn't as real as it should be. And so when I was seeing those animals around my childhood home, I just thought these are all the animals that existed. And then I saw other animals which I never paid attention to, but pangolins were just really different, right? You remember the full photo that I show, and you can look at it much later. The fact that you've got this scaly thing is almost like a crocodile on a tree, a smaller crocodile that's got a really long tail. It's got a long tongue. It's just so cute. I just wanted to see that animal that I'd never seen, because I thought I'd seen a lot of those small type animals a lot of the times. And so I just kept it at the back of my mind. It would be cool to see this animal. Even when I was before I started studying pangolins and working in the national park, I really wanted to see one while I was out in the forest. Never did, but I always had it in the back of my mind. But because I didn't see one for such a long time, and then I saw a couple of them being sold as meat, I just thought it must be that pangolin population is actually really declining and there's not a lot left. And at the time, there was nobody looking into pangolins where, in Nigeria, or at least in Southeast Nigeria where I grew up. And so I really wanted to honestly see them first of all, and then try to study them. I think, seeing them has always been one of the motivations, or even wanting to go in the forest and, taking the beating actually to spend some time in the forest to find them.
Okay, one more here from YouTube. This is from some 4th graders in New York, and they're curious, Charles, what is some of the biggest challenges you've encountered in your work?
Great question. It's actually changing behavior, because now we understand that pangolins are killed for meat. And so if you're taking that meat away, whether by force in terms of using the law that exists, or convincing people, there needs to be an alternative. And usually we're not in the position to provide that. All we can do is preach the message, the pangolin conservation message. And we hope that, people see reasons to change. What would be really good is you say, well, because you take 300 pangolins out a year, we would give you the meat that, that's equal to that, what you would get from 300 pangolins. That's equitable, that's, sensible. And that's the kind of thing that you would also ensure that it lasts. Because right now, you might tell somebody, stop hunting pangolins. They get the message right there, right now. and they really want to change, but they go out in the forest tomorrow, they see a pangolin and you're not there, and they're like, well, it's just this one, and they might still take it. So I think just working with this is almost a faith-based approach where you believe and hope that what you're doing is going to change behavior, because you're not actually compensating for that. So that's one of the toughest things on the job, actually.
Okay. Well, let's see if we have follow-up questions before we sign off for today. We'll check with our backstage classes. Mr. Hancock's crew, do you guys have a follow-up for us?
Of course we do. Yeah. What are some main predators other than humans, I guess? And is there any meaning behind the name? Because one of the students said it sounded very much like a penguin.
Oh, that is so true. I'll start with the second one. Most times when I tell people I study pangolins, they go, "Oh, penguins are very cool." And I'm like, "Yes, they're cool. Yes, they're cool, but I don't study penguins. I study pangolins." So pangolins are actually the English version of a Malay word called pangolin or penalbian. I can't remember. I think it's pangolin, and it literally means to roll up in a ball. Which is what they do. So that's the meaning behind pangolins, pangolin name. And the first question was
the other question was any other predators.
Yes. Yeah. So pangolins have been, they usually don't have a lot. I mean, from time to time you see a few things. So crocodiles in India have been documented to actually prey on pangolins. So a crocodiles usually they have one of the strongest jaws in the animal kingdom, so there's nothing really they can do. You pull the pangolin there for a long time, you suffocate it, and you can gradually chew it. But if you're a crocodile, you better spend your energy doing something else, because gosh, you're not going to enjoy that pangolin meat because of all the scales. It's also been documented that lions, I think maybe a leopard, not a lion, may have killed a pangolin once, but it's every now and then. Actually, there's really cool videos, I think on YouTube or somewhere on the internet, of a lion or a leopard, I can't recall, playing with a pangolin, right? It comes to it, touches it, and it rolls into a ball, and he just keeps kicking it and trying to figure out what it is. I don't think he eventually eats it. But yeah, you get one of these, documentations here and there, but nothing specifically as say an antelope and a lion. Lions would usually feed an antelope. So humans are actually the main predators these days.
Right. We can just pick it up and take it, right? But if it rolls into a ball and then the lion can't figure it out, right? It's got a super arm. Perfect. Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mr. Hancock.
Thanks, Great Forest. Good to see you today. Okay, let's see. Mr. Poole's class, do you have a follow-up for us today?
Yeah, my student Arison has a question for you.
Awesome.
Are pangolins related to armadillos and stuff like that?
Great question. So biologically, they aren't related to armadillos, but you can imagine. I imagine why you've said that, and it makes a lot of sense, right? Because they look almost similar. The only difference is that armadillos have rings that go from side to side, whereas pangolins have scales that are just like interlocking fingernails. Fingernails. So the pangolins are actually more taxonomically or biologically related to cats and dogs than they are to armadillos. And again, it's just some really long evolutionary history, and that just means they've got separate pathways to how they've come up to what they are today. But a lot of people actually do think so. I also thought they were more related. I also thought they were related to armadillos a long time ago, until I learned about it, and I thought, wow, this nature is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a great example of convergent evolution, kind of two separate species, but coming up with kind of a similar solution to a problem like defense, for instance. Very cool. Thanks, Mr. Poole's crew. Let's check in with our virtual elementary school. Do you have a final question for us for today?
I don't think we have any more questions today. We're just very enthralled listening, but I don't think we have any more questions right now.
All right. Perfect. Well, thanks for hanging out with us today.
Thank
The 4,
you.
5s, and 6s.
Amazing.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, to the classes out there, a huge shout out. Thank you so much for joining us live today and all the great questions. Please do take some time to do some art today. I think that would be awesome. If you flooded Charles with some pangolin art and you sent it to pangolino.org, I will send a reminder to classrooms as well with that link. And then Charles, a huge shout out to you, not only for the great work you're doing, but letting us steal a little bit of your time today and to share it with classrooms.
Oh, it's a pleasure, and really engaging questions. I really love having this conversation. So thanks for having me.
All right. Excellent. Well, thanks everyone. Enjoy the rest of the week. We hope to see you in a whole bunch of ocean action next week when we celebrate our ocean with the Explorers Club and World Ocean Week. But for now, we're going to say goodbye. So thanks everyone. Thanks, Charles. And we'll sign off for now.
Bye.
Thank you.